Hello and welcome to a much anticipated brand new module. We'll be creating a magnificent rooster with optional but rather glorious metallic embellishments. So the materials you'll need are a piece of heavyweight cartridge paper, either A3 or A4, or a double page spread in your A5 sketchbook. You'll need a hard pencil such as an HB, and if you have one, a higher lead pencil such as an 8B. But don't worry too much if you just have an ordinary pencil. I'll explain why later. You'll also need your watercolours, your size 1 and size 6 brushes, and if you can find one, a larger brush like a decorating or child's paintbrush. You'll need a set of gouache paints too. And optionally, you might like to add details with coloured pencils and some shiny metallic paper such as sweet wrappers. If you're using these, you'll also need a pair of scissors, a sheet of tracing paper or anything see-through like baking parchment, and a glue stick. Right, so the first thing you'll need to do is to make sure your area is A4. If working on a bigger piece of paper, draw around a sheet of A4 first. Then, using an HB pencil or similar, you're going to draw in the line where the grass meets the sky, around 3/4 of the way down the page. Next, lightly draw in sunbeams as guide for when you will paint them. Now, using the large brush you have found, any brush will do, start to mix a nice strong green on your watercolour palette and make sure the paint is really nice and liquidy. Start to add the green grass by using fast, sort of confident swishes of the brush right across the page, going over the edge of your A4 area or paper to ensure full coverage. Continue adding layer by layer, remembering to keep the paint nice and watery until the whole area is covered in a nice grassy green. When the green paint is dry, you can use the same method to paint a lovely bright pale yellow sky. Again, making sure the watercolour is really watery. And you might like to add a layer of yellow to the green grass, just to make it a little bit stronger and warmer too. Now it's time to add the darker yellow sunbeams. Using your size 6 paintbrush, make a much stronger yellow by adding in some orange and darker yellow. Start to paint in the beams, again making sure the paint is nice and watery, but this time a bit thicker, more intense with colour. They'll start narrow and, following your original pencil lines, grow wider at the top. Now for the rooster transfer. I'm using an 8B pencil, but I'm using a harder HB pencil to transfer the image. Use the softest lead pencil you can find, but please don't worry if you can't find one. Honestly, any pencil will do. You'll just have to press that bit harder whilst drawing over this image and when scribbling over the back to transfer it. Top tip, don't do this with your paper underneath, as you may make an imprint. Once the rooster is all drawn over, turn the page over and place centrally on your A4 yellow and green sunshine painting. You may like to secure the image with a little low-tack tape. I always take as much of the stickiness away first so it doesn't tear the paper. You could also use paper clips. Once the transfer is nice and secure on your page, take your HB or harder pencil, so not your soft one, and start to scribble all over the back, making sure you scribble over the lines you drew on the rooster that you'll see through the paper. If you have just used ordinary pencils, you'll have to scribble quite hard. However, if a soft pencil was used, a gentle scribble will do. Be sure to have a little peek every now and then to make sure you are applying enough pressure. Once the whole area is covered, you can remove the transfer. And there you have it. Perfect! A rooster all ready for colour. You will now need your set of gouache paints and a palette. So have a really good look at the reference sheet first to get a good idea of which colours to use. You could copy a tail from one rooster or a head for another, just see what inspires you. There are some fantastic blues, reds and greens. And don't forget, you could also just copy my painting of the rooster on the instructions. But of course, it's entirely up to you which colours you use. Now start dotting some of the gouache colours onto a palette. I'm starting with blues, so I'm mixing dark and mid blues with white to create lots of different huey blues. I'm using my size 6 brush here and adding water to make the paint nice and creamy. use the tip of your brush for all the pointy bits like in between feathers or for the ends of feathers. Now remember, you're only creating a base colour here, so don't worry if you make the odd mistake like I have here, and you can always paint over things to correct them to how you would like it. So carry on this way until all the rooster has been covered in colour. For the tail, make sure each feather is a different colour from the one next to it. Next, it's time to add some darker and finer details. Really look at my example or the reference sheet for this. I use lots of different darker greens on green areas and different darker blues on different blue areas. I'm also using my size 1 brush here. This is so I can paint smaller lines and add finer details like little lines on feathers or scalloped wing feathers and lighter feet. This is the most relaxing bit. So I hope you get a bit lost in the process like I did. Once all the darker details have been completed, it's time to add white highlights. Simply add a generous blob of white gouache to your palette so that you can mix a little in with all the colours you have already used. Adding the highlights is really satisfying. It brings the whole image to life. I've added a small streak of paler coloured paint to almost all of the feathers. It highlights their shape really nicely, especially the scalloped ones. Continue doing this until you feel the rooster is suitably highlighted. The next 2 options are entirely up to you. You may feel that by adding the highlights, the rooster is well and truly finished. But I'm an over-provider and a sucker for detail, so I'm adding some coloured pencils. I'm just using some dark green pencils, some brown, blue, red and orange. Make sure the pencils are nice and sharp and just accentuate the edges of the feathers, giving the rooster a really 3-dimensional and crisp quality. Carry on adding the details to the edges of the feathers and the scalloped edges. Finally, add some white pencil highlights for that extra little bit of definition. Now, as I said, I do tend to over-detail, but I just can't resist adding this cherry on the cake, the metallic features. So to do this, take some tracing or baking paper, anything you can see through really, and place over your rooster. Then, using any pencil, draw in which areas you would like to highlight. I'm choosing a few to be gold for the feathers under the rooster's head. So draw exactly the shapes you would like to stick on. And once these have been drawn on, take your paper and make it a bit more manageable by cutting it into a smaller size. Then place over a metallic piece of paper. It could be anything. I'm a great hoarder of chocolate and sweetie wrappers, but here I'm going for plain gold. Cut out a similar shape, and without moving your tracing paper, carefully cut out each pencil shape and position on your rooster. Once all your little metallic pieces of paper are in position, you can start to secure them down. So, the way I do this is by sliding each little piece carefully over a glue stick with your fingertip to secure in place. Continue doing this until all your chosen coloured metallic paper is in situ. Repeat this process on any other areas of the rooster you would like to add metallics. Feathers on the tail or body, for example. Now for the crowning glory, literally. It's the rooster's crown. I just felt this had to be shiny red metallic. Don't you agree? So here we have the nearly finished rooster. Now, the final touch, I promise, is I've added a little darker green shadow under the rooster to give him some grounding and a few little bits of shading at the base of the sunbeams. Now it really is finished. If you're framing your rooster, it will fit into an IKEA Reba frame. That's RIBBA. And I think you'll agree, adding the metallics was well worth it, and the shading really makes the rooster appealing. Of course, you may have completed another beautiful sketchbook spread like we did in my studio session. I really hope you love your rooster as much as we all did ours. So please do share your roosters using the new hashtag of Maizels Rooster, much shorter than the other one. Thank you so much, everybody, and I really hope you join me for the next time.